My talk is going to be an analytical discussion of the 20th century urbanism in Iran and the 20 years of the 21st century. And it will involve certain periods, obviously, and many ups and downs in this situation. The spectrum of the urban planning in Iran is relatively recent, just as it is in many other countries. But in Iran, it has gone through very different aspects, and at each stage it has been involved with certain number of hurdles that many other countries haven't had. The first 25 years of Iran, from 1900 to 1925, was the period of Qajar rule, very decadent, and a dynasty coming to its end, with the whole country in turmoil, and in fact everybody being quite dissatisfied. And in 1906, as you all know, we had the constitutional revolution in Iran, and in order to transform the absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. In Iran, we have gone through at least two important revolutions to achieve democracy. But unfortunately, both of them have turned a little stale. And I hope that we don't need a third revolution in order to arrive at the democracy that the people are after. In this 25 years, in fact, nothing productive was achieved, and planning was one of them. Almost nothing was done, because the country is not in a situation to actively involve itself into planning or architectural activities. In 1925, the regime changed from the Qajars to the Pahlavi. Of course, could be considered as a landmark, because as Mr. Jalili very aptly pointed out, and I don't need to go into any details, Reza Shah tried to modernize the country and concentrated a great deal on various aspects of this situation. The accession of Reza Shah, a considerable start of modernization was instituted. As was said, a dictatorial secular regime that was the springboard of modernization in Iran. It included the modernization of the public institutions, general administration, infrastructure, roads, railways, health, education, and social reforms. This was a period of very active technical participation of Germany with Iranian administration. Most of the urban planning work in this period was concerned with the building and expansion of streets and wide avenues. In fact, in this, neither in the period, Qajar period, nor the Pahlavi period, we did not really start any real urban planning projects. Although Reza Shah built some very interesting buildings, as again Ms. Jalili pointed out, on many of them on Achaemenian style, but there was not a great concentration on urban planning in the real sense. And the idea of street buildings and avenue building continued. Now one of the first urban planning works which was carried out in Iran, and that again was in fact a street building planning work, was carried out by Karl Frisch, and strangely enough, he was a German courier engineer and the technical director of Hamadan leather factory. And he was not a trained planner. And in those days, if somebody was called an engineer, they thought that he was an engineer for almost everything. And the specialization as such hasn't come to Iran in a big way yet. And he suggested a star-shaped central square, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and most of it is carried out. After the 1958, when after the Second World War, the American influence was considerably increased in Iran. And unlike the present political situation, the American administration at the time was in fact very helpful towards the Iranian nation and the Iranian government. And they had devised various organizations to help out with the planning and the future development of Iran. And this Sanandaj master plan was done by the United States Operation Mission to Iran in 1958. And they did 2 or 3 master plans. But at this period, 2 or 3 master plans were made quite haphazardly. And mainly because somebody in one of these cities obviously was influential enough to convince the government or the local government to make an urban plan. Another urban plan was Isfahan, and this is more of a sketch plan, really, than a real urban design plan. And this was also done by the United States Operations Mission to Iran. Another city which had a pseudo master plan was the city of Qom, and in 1964. Now, this haphazard development, urban development, continued in Iran until 1966. 1966, as far as urban planning in Iran is concerned, was a landmark year, because of the inauguration of the High Urban Planning Council in Iran, which I had promoted for many years. When I returned from Europe in 1961, I realized that we have no organization or no notion or no willingness to do any planning work in this country. And I started promoting this idea and concept of promoting a systematic urban planning situation. And fortunately, it was finally accepted. And in 1966, this is a photo that the Shah and the Queen came for the inauguration of the High Urban Planning Council. From 1966 onwards, until the Islamic Revolution of Iran in 1979, there were master plans were made for most of the major Iranian cities, and there were some civic design projects as well. Consequently, from 1966, the concept of urban planning the real modern concept of urban planning started to take off. This is my regional development plan for the Nowshehr-Chalus region, which was the result, the first of these master plans, which were commissioned by the High Planning Council and were carried out. Another one which we did was the Khorramshahr-Abadan region master plan, again commissioned by the High Urban Planning Council. In 1970, there was the master plan developed by Aziz Farmanfarmayan and Victor Gruen for Tehran. Now, apart from these master plans, which continued being commissioned by the planning organization and the High Urban Planning Council, we proposed an urban renewal project for the surroundings of the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad, which in fact was the city center of Mashhad. And another project later was also proposed, which was called Shahristan Pahlavi, to become the Tehran city center. The Mashhad city center, we submitted our proposal in 1968 to the Shrine Organization and the governorship of Mashhad. This project was very carefully studied, and we made a very comprehensive local survey and the feasibility study about the existing situation. And we had a group of 50 surveyors, apart from specialist economists, statisticians, architects, planners, etc., social scientists, and so on. We made a very comprehensive study of the present situation and also the feasibility study, which included the population of the area, the ownership of land, the ownership of the buildings, even the number of stories of buildings, etc. And we studied all the different activities which were or existed in that area in 1967. And we made complete statistics of the shops, the various activities, like there's a lot of Musafir Khune, for instance, in this area, and so on and so forth, but they were all very carefully studied. And from this preliminary study, we developed an urban design concept for this area. And we immediately realized that there was a huge force, which is shown with these arrows. This is the shrine of Imam Reza area, which is an important pilgrimage area. And right now, about around about 25 to 30 million people visit this shrine every year. And not only from Iran, but from different parts of the Middle East as well. So there's a huge force of destruction, a destructive force, in fact, because of the economic situation. Everybody was interested to get a foothold in that area. And consequently, we decided that we have to create a project that somehow stops this force from destroying this place. And we decided, this is the central, the area of the Imam Reza shrine with its different buildings, including the Gohashad Mosque and so on and so forth. And we proposed some buildings around here. And outside of these buildings, we proposed a green area. And the gray area, for a distance of some distance from this area, was to have limited stories of buildings so that they wouldn't compete with the monuments of Imam Reza. At this area, we realized that is going to have very great traffic problems. Consequently, in our concept, we decided that we are going to have 3 levels of traffic in this area. One level of traffic would consist of transit traffic, which would actually, there are 4 streets which are very important highways that sort of anybody who wants to go from one side of Mashhad to the other has almost has the possibility, must pass by one of these streets. Consequently, we made a transit level at the bottom, and then another level over that, which consisted of the traffic which wanted to end at the Imam Reza Shrine organization, either for religious reasons or administrative reasons. And we provided the necessary parkings, and we designed the parkings in a way that they would be expandable easily without any destruction from year to year, because we foresighted that there's going to be a big increase in traffic. And this was our general design for this area. In the middle, you see the complex, the Imam Reza complex, which includes several buildings and various other things. And these were the buildings that we proposed that would surround the Imam Reza complex, and the darker part here would act as a green area, separating in a way, but not completely, the Mashhad city from the shrine area. One of the important things which I must emphasize, and is not realized by many people, is that religious cities or religious areas are usually divided into 3 types of functions. And one of the functions is the cities that have pilgrimage concept about them, and they cater for pilgrimage. Mashhad being a very good example and a large example of such a thing. Now, another type of religious centers is like Qom. Qom is not essentially a pilgrimage center. It's a Quranic center. In other words, it's a religious, cultural, and study center. Consequently, that the function of Qom, for instance, and we were responsible for the master planning of Qom as well. But our concept over there was completely different to what we proposed in Mashhad. And now, in 1975, there was an idea of building a city center for Tehran. And two well-known architects, one American, Louis Kahn, and another Japanese, Kenzo Tange, who were both very well-known architect planners, were invited to submit plans for this Tehran city center. Now, their plans were very different to our Mashhad plan. As we briefly illustrated, we had gone through a great deal of preliminary studies in order to arrive at a physical solution to it, but all based on the local conditions and the analysis and the requirements, future requirements of the area. These plans by Louis Kahn and Kenzo Tange were in fact merely architectural plans, and they cannot be really considered as urban planning concepts or plans. They're just the juxtaposition of several buildings next to one another. And a strange forced marriage was asked of Louis Kahn and Kenzo Tange, who in this illustration, you see that on the left is the proposal of Louis Kahn, and on the right is the proposal by Kenzo Tange, and they're very different to one another. And then the Iranian authorities thought that if these two cooperated together, maybe a better plan would come out. But these forceful marriages in architecture or urban planning or any kind of art is very catastrophic, and it is very difficult, or I must say even impossible, to have these done. So eventually they were asked to combine, to give a combined plan. And you see that they've sort of more or less put these two ideas side by side. And if I go back, you'll see that this part and this part is seen in these areas. But none of those were finally accepted, and a British firm, Lewin Davis International, was chosen to planned this Tehran city center. Unfortunately, their design was a very, very ordinary and non-artistic and non-technical result. It just, as you can see, they put several different buildings, a huge boulevard in the middle, and a very ordinary concept of planning with nothing original or imaginative in it. Now we come to the what happened after the revolution. The Islamic Revolution of 1979, there were, of course, because of the situation, there were not any important things going on. There's some modifications of the master plan were made for Tehran. And this is Tehran of present period. I'm sorry if I'm just going to go very quickly now, if I'm doing a little, going over the time. And one of the things which they did in 2007, the idea was a very good one, but the carrying out was unfortunately catastrophic, was the Maskan Mehr, which was supposed to have been constructed for the low-income group of people. And this was carried out very unscientifically and in various places without any social amenities or physical amenities and so on and so forth. And quite a lot of money was spent on it as well, at no avail. Now, this is my final concluding thing. After 50 years, we have our original plan of 1968 for the surrounding of Imam Reza came to, was going to be realized just before the revolution. And when the revolution happened, everything stopped and nothing happened, in fact. So 42 years has gone by from the revolution, and we decided to propose, first of all, to see if we can propose a new concept. And this is the present situation in Mashhad. Now, we decided that we can, we studied the present situation, and we realized that we can do a modified plan based on our basic 1968 concept of replanning the surroundings of this very important Islamic complex. And as you see, it's we have tried to preserve many of the lines and the character of Mashhad in our new plan, which was destroyed, in fact, after the revolution. And they built huge areas, huge sands, some of them much bigger than a few football pitches and so on. Very ugly, very distasteful. and very inhumane. In other words, they have turned this area into a very inhumane and very ugly thing. Our plan is, as you see, we incorporate a great deal of greenery, and we make the area much more user-friendly, so to speak, to the visitors, whether they are religious or non-religion, because all sorts of people visit this area. And we, in our new design, which I'm presenting this for the first time, it hasn't been shown yet, and our project is not completed. It's going to be completed at the end of the 220. I have not shown these slides to anybody else. This is the first time that I'm presenting these. And you see that what our situation, what our concept for this area is, and how it is going to be both integrated and at the same time separated from the rest of the city. As I was going to say, and I didn't finish that matter, that these pilgrimage places, in fact, the areas of pilgrimage are a great nuisance to the citizens of that city. And we made a study of many pilgrimage centers, not only of Islamic religion, but other religions as well. And we noticed, and we knew this before, that they are all a little separated from the city. For instance, Vatican is completely a walled area, a very tall wall. The city of Lourdes in France, they get quite a big pilgrimage there. It's separated from the rest of the city by greenery and river and so on and so forth. So consequently, we followed the same concept. And this is these are the two main entrances to the haram of Imam Reza, that what they have done after the revolution, you just don't know from where to enter this place. Consequently, we have tried to revive, and this was more or less what it looked like in the ancient times. And we have a raised pedestrian area, and this, of course, is if any of you has gone to Mashhad recently, you have seen that is a huge mess of cars, buses, motorbikes, pedestrians, all mixed up. And in this project of ours, as in our previous project, 3 completely separate levels of traffic: transit, those that finishes at the Imam Reza Shrine and the complex, and the rest of the area is completely pedestrian, and necessary parkings and loading and unloading areas and various amenities have been foreseen. we have combined both the classical, the ancient, and the modern. One of the bad things which has happened in the Imam Reza complex is that they have ceramic everything all over, and consequently the excuse me, it is very monotonous, and the new ceramics has completely overwhelmed the older work. And in our design, we propose a completely modern concept, just as has been done, for instance, what Pei did in Louvre. Of course, don't think that we have copied Pei. No, we haven't, because this concept of ours is more than 20 years before Pei actually made that thing. This is, for instance, what is called the clock entrance, and you see the combination of the modern and the existing classic ancient buildings. And the combination of these really shows the ancient buildings, instead of trying to do everything around it in the same style. And this is the other side, the Naqarekhane entrance, and you see a lot of greenery in our design and proposal, and it's a very user-friendly, a green project. Thank you very much for your patience.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Borbor. I very much enjoyed your talk. It was a great overview on urban design of various cities in Iran, and also for presenting your great work on urban design for Chalus, and also the civic design for Mashhad, which I've recently been, and I totally agree with you. It's a chaos. And it was very thorough and feasible study that you presented, and I'm sure, like myself, everyone else would be fascinated to know more about this. It's a shame that your design was not selected, and I sincerely hope for the 2020 design to go through. I'm sure we're running out of time in a bit, so I'm going to ask Dr. Grigor